and I've got an introduction to share with you all, and then we'll turn it over to our speaker as quickly as possible. So welcome to everyone, and thank you for being here to be part of this for the 24th session of our COVIDeo series, right? Of organizing and upheaval. And as you hopefully are getting those weekly emails telling you about the offerings coming up, the demand has continued to be very high, and the interest of speakers and sharing thoughts with you very high. So we will be continuing through May. And it just, there we go. So today our session is Forward from Here with Don Moffitt of Columinate. I'll talk more about that in a moment. A little bit of housekeeping, video if you can. This one, there's not going to be a whole bunch of slides. We're really going to get to connect with each other. So it'd be great if you were on video, if at all possible. If you can't or don't want to, we understand. Do mute though if you're not speaking. There are a lot of us on this line and it will cause sound issues. This call is being recorded, so please do keep that in mind, that it will be recorded and shared publicly. So anything you share will be public. And check-ins, again, is just you throwing the name of your co-op in the chat, because again, we are expecting 50+ people today. So we're not going to have time to individually check in, but we appreciate knowing which co-ops are in the room. For participation today, just keep in mind that the call is only an hour long. We keep it to that, so it needs to be focused. So please stay with Don on Don's topic and keep comments and questions related to that. Along with that, we're going to ask you to use the chat. With 50 people in the room, we cannot all unmute and just talk. So if you have questions you want to share, comments, please put them in the chat. Or if you say, I'd like to ask a question, throw that in the chat, and we can let you know when's a safe time to unmute and directly ask your question of Don. But please do not just unmute and go to town. Make sure you let us know in the chat and are called upon. Okay, with that all said, today's speaker is Don Moffitt from Columinate. I enjoyed this photo. This is a picture of Don. He was humoring us with a fun thing we do with Up and Coming. If you ever come to Up and Coming Food Co-op Conference, we ask our speakers to give us a photo for our countdown to the day of the conference. And Don took his photo in front of the Durham Co-op Market, which is actually the co-op in Durham, North Carolina, that he was project manager for and had a great deal to do with the success of. So this is just a fun photo of him, but he will be taking over today. He's got a fun interactive presentation for you, and I'm going to unshare my screen if it will let me do that. It's being a little odd.
Here's a question for everybody. Just put your hand up if you saw the photo.
Oh,
yeah, I don't think you shared it.
I don't think I did.
That's okay.
You all missed the fun photo of Don. Okay, well, I will share it out for posterity, but I'm going to turn things over to Don rather than spending more time on my slides. And I turn over to you, and you let me know when to let those polls loose.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So Jacqueline's watching the chat for me. I'm going to be talking and trying to look at the screen, but I've also got some notes I want to follow. And so let me just start by saying, depending on where you are today, good morning or good afternoon. As Jacqueline said, I am with Columinate. Most of you know that Columinate's a cooperative of technical assistance providers. We support our clients in everything from startup to operations to governance. And our website, you can learn more about us if you want to, is Columinate, like lighting the way forward together, columinate.coop. Of course, it's right behind my head too. The core of my work is in financial feasibility, mostly for retail grocery, a lot of startups, and also stores that are currently up and running. And as Jacqueline said, this is the COVIDeo series that FCI has been doing. And today we're going to talk about what's ahead for us, especially for co-op grocery stores. We're going to look at likely changes to the retail environment, to finance and real estate. But before I dive into that, I just want to say that FCI deserves a big thank you for concepting and producing this series. I was amazed when Jacqueline said it's the 24th already. Thanks for me, to Jacqueline, because she's been a big help preparing and for her help today. So, prognostication, great sport. And it's a great sport right now. You can open a link to any news source and read what some pundit believes will be our future. It's really easy, and someone's going to get it right and be hailed as a true visionary 2 years from now. The rest of us, of course, will be wrong. But if that person doesn't get it right, someone else will. Maybe me, maybe you. And so if you remember the old game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, contestants could use lifelines, one of which was poll the audience. You have your own insights and thoughts. So I'm going to poll you today a number of times to find out a little bit about what you're thinking and what we all think collectively. These polls are anonymous and brief. We'll leave them up for 15 seconds. They're going to be open that long, not long, so don't spend time overthinking the questions. Okay, but the first two, we're actually going to use the chat function. And most of you by now have probably used Zoom many times, but there's a bar at the bottom of your screen, and there's a chat icon that you can click on to open the chat box. If you're using a tablet and don't see it, just touch the screen, it'll pop up. The first question, in just 2 or 3 words, is tell us something that's been, that you would think about and say, you know what, unexpectedly challenging since we started staying home. So I like to start with this just to get an idea. People are saying, you know, this is creating some issues. And while I'm watching the chat box here, just to let people, okay, here we go. Not being able to sing together. You know, for me, my biggest challenge is my wife and my daughter are living in my office now. I've been officing at home for a long time, but having kids home, building membership, not being able to hug, yeah, exactly right. Art functions are canceled. Face-to-face is missing. Yeah, no touching. Boredom. Okay. So the thing that, and that this is not, nothing here is really totally surprising, right? We're all doing this, and we know that there's a lot of Zoom fatigue. Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple things you can do. One thing you can do is up in the upper right corner of your picture is 3 little dots, and one of the choices on that is hide self video. And if you do that, you'll find that that actually makes it just a little bit easier to be on Zoom. Okay, so let me go on with this. The second poll is also chat. And I want to know this time, again, in just 2 or 3 words, something that's been an unexpected blessing of the past few weeks. Yes, time together with someone you're close to, like your husband. The birds. Time to work on co-op stuff. Long-awaited crafts are getting done. Blue sky. Oh yeah, these are coming in fast. Not having to drive to every soccer game. Warm weather, yeah, that's been great. And so the thing is it just like it's true for us as individuals and true for our co-ops, is that there are challenges and opportunities, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So now we're going to do a poll that's a poll, and Jacqueline's going to open this up for us. From now on, it's anonymous. And I just want to know your affiliation. And that is to say, you're going to have 3 choices. You're a startup, you're an ongoing retail store, or you're not involved with a retail store. Those are my 3 choices. So Jacqueline, if you would do that. And then she's going to show us the results here in a minute.
All right. Are you guys
Let's see.
seeing?
Okay, almost everybody's a startup. Okay, so not surprising given it's FCI, but sometimes there are other people, and there are a few others here, which is great. And so now that I know who's here, I want to just move on to say that, as you all know, we are living in an era that's going to be studied for a long time. I tell my daughter, you are living history. It's not fun, but it is a really interesting time, so pay attention. Until March, pandemics were not on our radar screens, even though we have had some close calls. You might remember Ebola, for example, and that could have been a really different story. But hardly anyone thought about it would have believed that a virus could arise so quickly or bring so much fear and change, even as recently as, I would say that even as early January, we're all living a little bit in denial. So that's one impact, change. So, but that's always true, right? What's one thing that doesn't change? It's the fact that things change, but it's the rate of change that's happening now, right? It's accelerating very rapidly. So what do? We're in the middle of it and things are changing so fast, it's making our head spin. What we do is we plan now, we don't wait. We work on being agile and we work on being ready, because when the opportunities come, we were talking about that, right? There was both challenges and opportunities. If we're ready, then when the challenges come, we can take advantage of them. So let's talk about retail. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking with you about some of the changes. So there's a group of us at Columinate. We've been having internal calls and talking about just this issue. What do we think is going to change with stores? How can we support our clients? And three of the things that I think that all of us are probably looking at and really worth thinking about are bulk foods and salad bars and online shopping. We're going to look at those a little more closely in a minute, but I want you to tell me a little bit. Wait a minute, I'm sorry, let me back up. When you're planning, you have to think about not like, what are all the things that might be possible? And then you have to think about, well, are the changes going to stick, right? How long is this going to go on? What do I plan for? And the answer for me is that these things are going to stick, at least to some extent. There are a lot of factors going to make a difference. One of them is the nature of our customers. Those customers, at least my takeaway, is that they support local businesses. They support local ownership. They embrace the community that the co-op represents and that the co-op invests in. In fact, I think community is going to be more important than ever as we go forward. Some of the other factors are a little bit more universal, and they're related to our confidence, our customers' confidence, that health and well-being of our loved ones is not being compromised. And that's going to include, what's the full toll on health and life? We don't know. What about additional surges? We don't know yet. Vaccinations and treatments? We don't know yet. So we have to plan around those. But I think that the outcome will be is that people are going to be very shy about some of the things we used to just take for granted. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a poll. And this one is about online grocery buying. I'm just curious about the people here. And what I want to know is, prior to March 15th, that's going to be my sort of date. Have you ever bought groceries online? So let's see that poll, Jacqueline. There it is. Simple question. March 15th, ever bought it online? Shouldn't take more than a minute here. You got that result? There we go. Oh, more than I expected.
Yeah.
I tend to think that of course, everybody's like me. So 61% said no, but 39% had. Okay, now, for the people who said they had not purchased prior to March 15th, I have another poll for you. This one's just for the ones who had not purchased prior. And the question is, Jacqueline, you can go ahead and open it. It's, have you used online grocery buying since March 15th? Okay, everybody, let's see what we got. I know it's not 15 seconds, but well, look at that. That's really interesting. So 2/3 is still not using online, but 1/3 of those people, which would be, I think, about 20% of all of us here, are now buying groceries online and had not before. So, and I think that, like my mom, as an example, is somebody at 90 years of age, had never, ever used online buying before, and now is buying all her groceries online. And people are trying to find ways to minimize their contact. What we know is that prior to the pandemic, that only 6% or so of groceries were bought online. A typical increase in online sales, because we don't have all that great of data, it's happening so fast, but for online sales, typical increase would be about 3% month over month, which is still, that's healthy. But in March, online sales for retail were 26% higher than they were in February. And that's, of course, only includes a couple of weeks when people were really focused on trying to figure out how to not go into stores. That doesn't even include co-ops like Brattleboro, where they are doing curbside pickup, but not online. Every single order is placed through the telephone, and we're not even seeing any of that information. Most of us, most of you probably know a co-op that has implemented online purchasing in a matter of weeks. And when they would probably wanted to take a couple of years to work out the kinks and figure out how it's going to work and make sure they were able to do it effectively. So it's taken a big leap forward, right? That's online. So now I got another one. This is just finding out about you guys, seeing how things are going. And this time I'm combining bulk foods and salad bars, right? And the question is, prior to COVID-19, so March 15th, there you go. Did you shop for bulk foods and or at salad bars, like in the grocery store? I'm filling this out too, since I'm part of the sample. Okay. Yep. Okay. So I have to move mine over. 72% said yes, they had. Okay. Now, so that for the folks, this is a little bit longer. So we're going to give you just a moment to look at all the choices, because I want to know, for those of you who were buying, one answer is I didn't buy previously, so everybody can answer this one. But for those of you who were buying, what do you think will happen 12 months from now for you? So do you think you'll buy, you didn't buy, that's the first one, and just more? You know, I bought some, but I'll buy more. 12 months, right? And we're thinking about things that use like tongs, scoops, anything that you have to use with your hand. Or I'll probably cut a third out, or the last one is I don't think I'll buy any.
Still have a few answers coming in. Go. All right, stop jumping around. Share the results.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, okay, a goodly number, but less than half say about the same. A good 3%, they're very optimistic, that's great. And of all the other choices, the most say, I don't think I'll be buying any a year from now, right? This is just an indication of how things are changing. And what we're looking at, you know, it's a small and it's a decidedly not random poll, but it tells us that we have changes we need to plan for. Personally, I agree with the core of the results there, which is that we're going to see very few salad bars with sneeze guards and tongs. We're going to see very few self-serve bakery items. You know, where you open the door and the item is exposed to the customer. Now, I have seen those same cases in use where the item is in a clear plastic bag, right? That's happening today, and people are buying those. But the old cookies laid out on a tray, I think are going to be very hard for us to sell. So I think that co-ops that are open are going to be looking for funds to update their prepared foods area and their bulk areas. And I think that stores, most of you are in the startup phase. You're in thinking, you may not be in design yet, but some of the things to think about is, well, what does this mean for my co-op? How am I going to adjust to this new reality? I think that we'll see more grab and go, right? That's a great way. Pre-package it, put it in, it's cold. I think that we may see, this is something that the group in Columinate's been talking about. One way that if you want to distinguish yourself is to have more service food bars. So more like a cafeteria style. I could even imagine a little island where you've got cold items and hot items, and people can come up and ask you, I want a little bit more, please, or a little bit less, rather than just getting grab and go. That's a personnel expense that you have to weigh out, but a way of doing what you did before with the self-service bars, providing that kind of selection and variability in quantity, and maybe stand out a little bit. Similarly with bulk, as I said, I think it's going to be hard to get people to come back to it. I think that I've seen some stores right now with gravity feed bins that are still in use, But I know customers are looking at those handles and thinking, okay, how many other people have touched that handle? So I think that in the future, gravity flow will probably still be in use. Bulk, people want bulk. But I think that you may want to consider having, at least for a while until people are really comfortable, something like bakery tissue, where people can grab a tissue, use it to pull their handles and then dispose of it. Scoop bins, I think, are probably going to, it'll be a long time before we see scoop bins in regular use, and maybe never again. When I ran a store, I had some issues with those myself, but customers loved them, and so we dealt with the issues. And now I think they're going to go away, and we'll see things like it's sort of a contradiction in terms, but pre-packed bulk. The advantage of pre-packed bulk is that you can do a smaller quantity and have it on the shelf for the customer, and it has a lot less packaging.
Don, there's a couple comments I think might be interesting to this. What do you think that we'll ever see like actually service bulk areas?
So one of the advantages of bulk is that it's got a lower cost to it. Typically, not always, but typically it has a lower cost for the customer. But if we do service bulk, and it's possible, but I suspect that the added cost of the staffing will make it very difficult for co-ops to be able to actually make any money on it. So a co-op might say, well, yeah, we're going to do that because we really want to have that concierge mentality, right? We want people to come in and say, I get great service. And so it's worth it to us to break even on bulk by having somebody, back there scooping it, but it's going to slow it down too, right? If you only got one person behind the counter, think about, you go up to the deli counter and there's one person there and you're waiting in line, that's not always a great value. So the more I think about it, the less it appeals to me as a operational technique.
Keith added on to that and said, isn't that going to be kind of the same issue with prepackaged bulk then? I mean, that this is going to increase labor costs, that some of the same factors are in play.
Yes, it will increase labor costs, but it's much quicker to take a cornmeal and put it out into bags and then put twist size on them and then label them than it is to talk to a customer and have them go, oh, a little bit more, a little bit less, and deal with one customer at a time. Great. So yes, more labor, but not as much as the service bulk area.
Shirley from Suncoast brought up, what about requiring people to bring their own containers like some stores do with shopping bags? Would that address the bulk issue at all?
Well, I think that the big bulk issue is twofold, which does not have to do with the packaging. One of them is for a scoop bin, you have to open a cover, and then the product itself is exposed to the customer. That hasn't really been a concern of ours up until now. But at this point, I think people are really thinking about it. But even more important than that is the fact that, so I was over at Home Depot today, and let me tell you, those guys are nuts. I mean, the people shopping there and the people there. But what really bothered me is I got up to the checkout, and it's all self-service, and there are no built-in scanners. You actually have to pick up a scanner and hold it in your hand to scan every item. And I sat there looking at that scanner thinking, how many people have touched that today? And people that are walking around without masks on. And I think that's the second big issue around bulk and around salad bars is that people simply aren't going to want to reach down and grab that scoop or that pair of tongs. Now, the packaging issue is an interesting one because some health departments, when I was in Texas, health departments were like, no, 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 you do not bring in outside packaging for bulk because they wanted to be able to trace a problem, right? So if there was a problem with a bulk item that you bought, they wanted to be sure that it was my store's problem and not something because you brought in contaminated packaging. So wherever you're opening a co-op, if you want to do that, just check with your health department. But universally, it's not a universal solution. But I love that. I want to be able to bring my own jars in and not use plastic bags.
There were some comments here, and John, do you feel like we have time? In general, kind of like, there's kind of this awareness, like well, crud, you know, we're losing our sustainability edge. I mean, for some of us, that's a big piece of why we were all doing this. And suddenly everything's plastic, everything's pre-packed. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, no, I'm with you. Well, crud, right? I mean, I go into the store and I buy my produce, and previously everything that I bought, like potatoes, right, where I'm not just gonna eat, bite into it, or lettuce went into a plastic bag, but virtually everything else I just put in the cart and cashiers picked up and checked it out. But now when I get up to the front end, the cashiers are handling every product that every other customer handled, and then they're handling mine. And everything I buy in produce is going into a plastic bag. It's killing me. No, not literally, but I'm dismayed that, I am now a consumer of plastic in a way I never was before. I don't have a good solution for that. I think we'll find them. We're only at the beginning, right? And there are opportunities here. So somebody's going to figure out how to restore that sustainability edge for us.
I love that. There are some other comments, I think, or brainstorms on exactly how to do that. And I think we can hold off on those because I think you summed it up well that, you know, we don't know yet, but we are not pessimistic about the fact that we can dream up those solutions, and people were throwing out some ideas on that.
Yes. And like, if you think about how fast so many co-ops have implemented online ordering or over the phone for curbside, there's a almost infinite amount of creativity and strength and determination that's going to help us get through.
There are some multiple questions about no-touch technology, that side, you know, that thing that was a gleam in Amazon's eye before all this started. And I don't know if you want to go there right now.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes.
Okay.
I may not use the words no-touch technology, but I do talk a little bit about automation. So,
okay.
I do want to say that I think that one other thing that stores should be considering is stations for customer hygiene. One of my colleagues the other day who used to run stores said, "Oh, I always had hand washing sink in the bulk foods area." Not something I'd ever thought of, but that was something that for them, it was like routine, right? Let's have a way for customers to wash their hands. We may not have so many hand washing stations, but I bet that every grocery store is going to have, when it's available, more hand sanitizing stations, so that, you know, throughout the store, when people are uncomfortable, they can just stop and hand sanitize. So we need to be thinking, how do we make customers comfortable repeatedly?
That was, I want to call out Kelly from Silverton. She called that early in the conversation. She's like, what about hand sanitizing stations? So
right.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's likely that all of you are seeing or thinking about other things that, and if you're thinking and seeing creative solutions to problems, use your chat box, put it in. Jacqueline's capturing the chat, and people are going to be able to see, you know, everything that's going to go on. But I want to talk a little bit about the economy now. And I also want to talk a little bit about sort of the ramifications for real estate. So regarding that economy, probably most of us have begun to figure out that there's just no way to soft pedal it. We're in for a world of hurt. We're probably going to see economic situations we may not have seen in our lifetimes. But as a species, as a culture, we have been here before, right? We are endlessly creative and we're resilient. We've come through pandemics, world wars, natural disasters, the Great Depression. And this too is going to pass. After the Spanish flu pandemic, which of course, worse than anything that we've seen so far, things eventually settled down into something that was a new normal. And likewise, you know, one of these days, COVID-19 is going to be a painful memory. But one of the interesting questions is, how long will that be? So I'm going to ask you guys what you think. Jacqueline's going to open a poll for you. There it is, right there. And so don't worry about being wrong, because it is anonymous. Don't overthink it. But how long do you think it'll be before we return to the way things were? Restaurant business, employment, buying patterns, whatever you can think of, right? And I was really optimistic. I had all my time frames up to a year and then just longer than a year.
We've still got some answers trickling in here. All right, I'm gonna end it, guys. All right, and results.
Let's see here. Okay, 83% now saying, yeah, it's gonna be a long time. And I agree. I think we're in the first wave, and that by and large, social distancing has helped us avoid overwhelming our healthcare facilities. But we can see isolation exhaustion setting in, and we saw some of it in the comments. We are feeling it. A chorus of voices demands reopening restaurants and salons, and if we decide the danger is past and we become blasé, well, then there's a excellent chance the second wave is going to be even worse. And despite the media's excitement, I don't think vaccines and treatments are going to pop up here anytime in the near future. So this is all going to impact the economy, right? We'll probably phase in reopening. We're seeing that in some states, most states, because there is a political reality as well. And I think we're going to see that continue to happen until cases start to rise. Then we'll see states take a step back and then try to phase in further. And of course, I hope I'm wrong and we're near the end, but I certainly don't think so. And that process, that long, slow process, is going to chip away at the economy bit by bit. Not only is it forcing new business models that we've talked about, like online, but it's also accelerating processes that were already in motion. So just 3 of those are automation. So that's coming back to that no-touch technology, right? Another way to say that. So we're going to see businesses invest more and more in automation. And that limits their dependence on vulnerable humans, right? So think about meatpacking, right? What has really hurt the meatpacking industry is the fact that it's completely dependent on human beings, and the humans get sick. And when they move to automation, it's going to mean fewer jobs for people. That was in process, but we're going to see it go a lot faster. The online buying that we've talked about, well, that means that small businesses are going to struggle more, right? That was already in process. My wife has owned a small craft gallery selling art and crafts, like pottery and glassware and jewelry. And that's been something that she's been dealing with, but it's accelerating. And Amazon is plowing huge sums of money, both into their automation and into all of their delivery processes. And one of the third thing that I want to just touch on briefly is that construction is going to languish. We see this over and over again. And as the economy cools, people will put off projects that they were just 6 months ago ready to invest in. Now, each of these are going to have rippling effects, and they have silver linings, particularly if you're trying to plan something like a grocery store. Because here's the cool thing that we've seen over and over again in this crisis is that of all the businesses that are struggling, the grocery stores are the ones, that's the core business that people depend on. So, just like we talked about early on, with the challenges, the silver linings, and that's true at a larger scale. It's not to say that unemployment is a good thing, but hiring has been really hard over the past couple of years, and there are going to be a lot of people who are ready to get to work. That's a silver lining for us. Failing small businesses are not a good thing, but there's going to be more real estate available. There's going to be more sites available. A lot of people that I've been working with have been struggling to find a site that was that they could even think about leasing. And there's going to be more sites, and most likely at lower rents. And a slowdown in construction, not a good thing, right? That's more unemployment. But materials worldwide, the price is going to come down, and you're going to see contractors more anxious to get to work and really be much more competitive in their bidding. On another element that's it's sort of counterintuitive, I think that we're going to see strong investments in our co-ops by our owners. And the reason is that the people that invest in our co-ops, they don't do it for the return, and they do it knowing that there's a risk, but they do it because of our mission. and they do it because of their own personal values. And those two things are not changing, right? Our mission doesn't change and personal values don't change. And so I think people are still going to be looking, they'll be looking for places to invest, and they'll be looking to put money in places where they can make a difference in their own community. So we have an opportunity there as well. So this is the time to plan. This is the time to prepare. And when the opportunities arise, you and your co-op can be ready. So I do want to tell you just that one of the questions is, well, how do I plan when multiple things are possible? And in about 3 weeks, I'm going to do another COVIDeo, and we're going to look a little more closely at, the idea of decision trees and weighting possibilities and trying to figure out like how you do that planning. So I want to stop here. I got a couple of final thoughts, but what I'm interested right now is, Jacqueline, what you're seeing in the chat panel.
We got a lot going on. So there's a lot of I think people would like to jump back to the topic of technology. There's concerns that small co-ops will not be able to afford doing delivery, online ordering. There's just all sorts of questions and concerns about that, and becoming reliant on these technologies that will make us less resilient and less nimble. And I think I'm trying to sum up all the comments, and so on that. So I don't know if you want to share more thoughts on that. And folks, if you want to continue that topic, go ahead and throw some more things in the chat and see if let me know if I got that right.
Particularly, so so in my community, right, there's Weaver Street Market, which has 4 stores as a co-op, and there's the Durham Co-op Market. And Durham Co-op Market has said, we are not doing online, right? So they limited their hours. They're 11 to 7, and then that's not going to let them be competitive in the future, but they can still be competitive right now because of people want to shop at the co-op, and they're not concerned about those limited hours. They're still doing quite a bit of business. Weaver Street has said, hey, we're going to do online, and they are busy figuring it out just as fast as they can. How do we get the orders in? How do we process those orders? How do we talk to the customers and let them know what we have and what we don't have and substitute? And how do we do that rapidly so that it's no longer a 5-day lag after you place the order, but we can actually get it back to you the next day? And if you're a co-op and you're in a startup phase, all of this can be kind of intimidating, right? Because you're like, well, wait a minute. I had an idea how we were going to do this, and now it's changing, and it's changing in ways I can't even really get my hands around. But I will tell you that I have the confidence that there will be solutions that we will find and we will work out. So we will be more dependent. So if the internet goes down, right, and we no longer have the internet, it's going to bring vast changes. But as long as we have the internet, it's a tool that we can use. We're going to be dependent on it, but it's a tool that we can use and that we can learn to shape to our needs and our customers' needs. And I think we will get there. Remember, we're only, what are we in now? 8 weeks, 7 weeks? It's not unprecedented to hear the word unprecedented, but it actually applies in this situation, right? This is an unprecedented situation, and the responses have been, if you look at how all of us have been responding, there's a lot to see a good in this. And that includes the way our small local co-ops have been responding to the challenges of getting groceries, with distribution problems, with cleaning problem, all the problems that they're dealing with, and still being able to be effective. What else you got?
We got a lot. So a couple I really want to get to is one from Keith I'm going to get back to. I'm going to go next to this one. We've heard a lot about location. Moving forward, if there's going to be a lot of this delivery and so forth, why not be a virtual market, like connecting farmers to growers, and I think we're saying not retail.
So again, to my opinion, I believe that community is really important. I said that earlier, and I'll say it again. And I think it's really important to our customers, right? So one of the things that that Durham Co-op Market did before they had to change everything was $3 dinner nights. 300 people would come into the store, and they weren't really coming in for a baked potato. They were coming in because it was a happening, and it was a sense of community. And I think just like a lot of you are missing that sense of community with your neighbors, with your family, with your extended family, I think that being able to interact with people in the store is really important. And I think that while getting a package of rice is not an emotional event, and we don't really care how it gets to our shelf, that our produce, our perishable goods are more important to us. And we want to be able to look at the cheeses and decide which kind of cheese we want to take home with us, and not just buy cheddar. We want to be able to look at tomatoes and go, that one is the perfect amount of ripeness. I know that when I order, like we do some online, and when I order avocados online, I'm like, are they going to come already guacamole? Or am I going to have to wait 6 days before I can use them? And if I pick them out in the store, I get some choice about that. So I think the stores are still going to be important. Our co-ops, we don't have co-ops, you know, every mile and a half. And there's a reason for that. And so it actually may be to our advantage to extend our reach by being able to do if we're able to do delivery, right?
Keith, that actually goes right to Keith's question in my mind, which is, you know, people participate in food co-ops because of the sense of community, but that gets diluted with social distancing. Even if we get them back in the store, how are we going to counter that? Is it going to be a personable experience?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I will say that I suspect that some co-ops will do better at it to begin with, are probably doing better with it even right now than others are, but that as has always been the case, P6, we will learn from each other, and we will, all of us, help lift up, using the best examples to lift up all of us.
Got a couple more, and for those of you who do want to discuss the option of, you know, not having a store, connecting people directly to farms, serving to homes, there are startups that have gone that direction, a few that have kind of left the idea of doing a grocery store and gone that direction. Keith's situation is very unique, but yes, Keith, and so we can discuss that. I think it's a broader conversation. If you're looking into that and really want to process that through, reach out to your friend Keith here, reach out to us at FCI, and we can talk to you about that. But I want to get to Amanda's question. It's an important one. We don't actually all have internet, and this pandemic is widening the digital divide for those of us, you know, working to live in and are trying to serve low-income neighborhoods, and we're going to need solutions other than ones that are connected to the internet. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, but I'm not the only one here, and we're ranging far afield, and it's really interesting. But I'll tell you this. The other day, I got an email from a state senator, and he said, we just passed a $1.6 billion budget, one bill, and here it is line by line. And I was amazed at how much money was being spent on broadband. Some of it was hotspots to go on school buses to go into neighborhoods. Some of it was hotspots to give out. But the main point is that we are seeing, I think there are some major deficiencies that we have had, major inequalities. And broadband is one of them. Healthcare is one of them. The states are less able, to some extent they can deal with healthcare, but they're more able to deal with broadband. And at least in North Carolina, I think we're going to see some very rapid investments. So one of the things that I think might change, I got my fingers crossed, but it is politics, is that the state has not allowed cities to do their own broadband networks, right? So because the big broadband companies have been able to persuade the legislature not to let cities compete, but they actually haven't been serving the entire community. And so what I'm hoping is that the cities themselves can begin to invest. And actually we have some cities that did that before it was banned, and they actually serve a broader area than just within the city limits. We're going to be looking at how to address some, we as a culture, as a society, will be looking at how to address some of those inequalities.
Another one I wanted to go back to, where did it go? So there's a comment from Grant at Chicago Market. You know, center store, with the direction that things are going, like, is center store going to shrink or even disappear? He feels like where our differentiation is produce, prepared foods. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's, I think a lot of people have been thinking about that for several years now. There's a question of, like, do we really need 8 different or 10 different SKUs of olive oil, right? And can we serve the customer with fewer SKUs? Can we serve the customers in center store in a different way? And it's a huge challenge, right? If you have a dollar store, that's what they sell, right? They're selling laundry detergent, and they're selling canned green beans, and they're selling them cheaper than anybody else can sell them. And so I agree with Grant that that stores and grocery stores in general, that we cannot differentiate very easily in center store. So I think that's actually a fun place for us to be thinking about, how do we differentiate? What do we do with that area? I don't have a solution for you right now. I know people are working on it. I know there's different ideas that people are trying to implement. And I think the idea of really emphasizing the perimeter departments, the perishable departments, is a really good idea.
I think that's a direction everyone had been heading already. So yes.
Right.
Oh, okay. Grant equals Stacy. Sorry, Stacy. It was Grant's iPad, but it's Stacy. I keep doing that to you, thinking it's Grant from Chicago Market. Okay.
That Grant, he's so wise.
We've got a lot of comments coming in about food grocery trucks, about having satellite stores in neighborhoods, lots of those types of solutions. And I don't know if you want to take those on today or not.
The biggest question that we'll have will be how we can do sustainable solutions. I have been people doing curbside markets over the past few years. There have been people who have been doing deliveries particularly into communities that do not have food security, and we'll continue to see those efforts. But I think that one of the things that we're going to see, while I said a minute ago, I think the government will be investing more in broadband, I think that's true. But one of the big economic ripples that we are just beginning to glimpse is the fact that all this unemployment and all this cessation of business is going to completely undercut our local and state budgets. And so there's going to be a lot less funding available for initiatives that we might consider very important, but other people may not consider core government function. And I think, so we've got to find ways to do these alternative ways of distributing groceries in a sustainable manner. And some of it may be doing it with a nonprofit, right? And getting grant funding, for example.
All right. I would love to see data on ways to order a phone, Facebook apps. Not sure if link there. I did share National Cooperative Grocery is right now studying what every single food co-op is doing that is in there. So they have 155 co-ops now, and they are everyone who's doing curbside, who's doing phone order, who's doing online order, who's doing delivery. They're studying everyone's response and looking at what was used, if it was cost effective, and they're going to be sharing first results in early June with us here on the COVIDeo series. So that is coming. So some of these questions, I'd love to see data about how to order, how much this is costing. We're going to put those off because they're not a great use of Don's time right now because he doesn't have that data either. But that data is coming. Don, are there things that you would like to circle back to? We've got about 5 minutes left, and I wonder if there's topics you'd like to invite questions or comments on.
I'm happy to take a look at questions on any of this. I'm trying to look at let's see here. That's Jacqueline, okay.
Lots of the food truck stuff. Fewer SKUs would mean less, fewer SKUs in center store would probably disrupt our pricing, right? Because we'd be doing less volume with our distributors, was one of the comments.
Yeah, well, I'm not well enough versed in that to say. I can tell you that Ruff and Slater, who's the general manager of Weaver Street Market, and I have 4 stores, and he's been the general manager there for, gosh, 30 years. That their 4th store, he's trying that, right? It's like 2 SKUs of olive oil, and as an example. So he's, all I know is I have faith in Ruff and that he's not doing something wild-eyed. He's been studying this and figuring out how to keep the pricing structure, but I don't know how he does it.
Stacy here, could you talk more about finding property and funding startups now? I know you're gonna go much more depth later this month on this, but can you go a little more into that piece, the real estate and funding post-COVID-19?
Yeah, so it's one of the things is, of course, right now, is it's really hard to get out and look at real estate, right? Because of the social distancing issues. And we're not even actually beginning yet to understand, we don't have any real strong sense yet of the extent of the changes in the real estate market that we may see. So what you want to do is continue moving your co-op towards the time. And if you're in the site selection stage, if you're working with a local broker, then as things change, they should be tapped into those changes. And if people have desirable real estate now, I mean, I think we're going to see 2 things happen at different timing. One will be that we'll start to see some of these businesses decide, and I'm seeing it now in the paper, right? I'm seeing a restaurant or another business that announces, we're done, right? We're not going to reopen. And we'll see more and more of that. And then at some point, I think the property owners are going to get the message. And that'll be the second sort of thing that brokers will be able to help you understand, is when the market is changing. And they're like, yeah, look, before they might have been like, it's 20 bucks a foot or it's $15 a foot and there's no tenant improvement money. And those numbers might start coming down as more and more real estate comes on the market. So just keep working the process like you have been. Stay in touch with people. Stay in touch with anybody that you have that's tapped into the market, and they can help you understand what's going on.
And did you want to take the last couple of minutes to speak to anything about what you think is going to happen with lending and financing?
Lending. Well, lending is an interesting question because some of our lenders, okay, so first of all, most of you probably know that most of the co-op development funds have had a moratorium on lending to startups, just because there's been some experience over the last few years that's been too painful for them. So that's not a huge change, but I think that some of the economic ripples, I don't want to go too deep into down the rabbit hole here, but some of the economic ripples will include some of those businesses don't reopen. Not only will they be giving up on their lease obligations, but they may be giving up on their debt obligations. And as people have issues with repaying their debt, I think we will see lenders who are more and more constrained in what they can lend to. So looking for non-traditional sources of funding will be important. Really continuing to build relationships so that, remember, one of the businesses that is doing well in this time is the grocery business, right? So you've got that, you know what your story is, and that's part of your story, right? So you keep talking to everybody in your community about the importance of having a store, where you want to have the store, selling the products you want to sell, that's locally owned and locally governed. In the Great Recession, when the Great Recession happened, Durham Co-op was in the process of doing a store, and we suddenly realized our fantasy, we're going to go to a bank, we're going to get the funding, we're going to get a developer, we're going to build a store. That all went out the window. And it took us 3 more years, maybe even 4. But, and then we found a mission. Well, we didn't find, they found us, because we had been building relationships throughout the community over and over. And a mission-driven lender came to us and said, a developer came to us and said, we want to build the store for you. We want to build the store you want, and we actually will give you a lot of money to develop out the interior of it, and your rents, we're going to use some of our other rents to help underwrite the rents that you have to pay. And all of that would not have happened if we had not been constantly telling our story, constantly connecting with people. I had a chart, I'll tell you just a minute. I had a chart on the wall in my office, and I would say, okay, Jacqueline Hanna. So I'd go to Jacqueline Hanna and I'd say, Jacqueline, here's my deal, here's my story. And Jacqueline, not Jacqueline, but she's standing in as a proxy, would laugh at me. And they would say, like, we're not gonna make that, that's not gonna happen. So I said, okay, I understand that. We'd argue a little bit. And then I'd say, well, can you tell me 3 people I should talk to? And they would give me 3 names. I'd come back and I'd put them on my chart. And then I'd say, oh, I know, I already got Jacqueline's name. Okay, so I've got enough. And I just kept doing that. And I can't tell you how many times I heard no. 2 yeses. That's all I needed, right? That was $250,000, which wasn't, it didn't get us over the complete hump, but it was 25% of our local fundraising campaign, right? 2 yeses. So keep building relationships, keep telling your story.
Yes, and I'm gonna say, we usually have wrapped up by now, but we were just having such a great time with you. Do you want any final thoughts you want to share, Don?
Yep, I do. And that's just this. As we navigate all of these troubled waters, we have to continue to honor our shared humanity, right? We have to embrace the opportunities to care and to love and to be better people. And we have to be kind and be thoughtful. So I wish all of you well. I am available. I should have had my email address up here. First name, last name. You can see it if you can see my picture. It's Don Moffitt, no spaces or dots, at columinate.coop. And I am on Columinate's website. And Jacqueline will be glad to help connect you to me as well if you want to continue any of this conversation. I've had a great time. Jacqueline, thanks for the invitation to come today. Thank you all for being here and for participating.
Thank you, Don. And Don will be back. I do want to share real quick. I always send out a wrap-up email. You will all receive Don's email in that, as well as, Don, there's been some requests. Would it be okay to share your outline from today?
My outline? Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. Just so people know where to stick their notes. And you're going to, of course, get the video recording. So that's all going to come out to you guys via email. I do want to make sure you know, I know some of you had to go, but we have coming up Friday, Outreach Confidential. This is a peer group for people who are leading outreach at startup food co-ops to get together and talk about what the heck has been going on for the last 8-9 weeks. What's working, what's not working, help each other workshop problems. That will be led by Katie Novak of Katie Novak Cooperative Coaching. I will be doing the one you guys requested for board chairs. Board chairs we're doing Monday, board chair confidential. These are non-recorded. If you want to participate, show up, because we want to be able to talk kind of off the record. And then we've got In This Together with Kim Estes from Market 166. This is specifically about the program they've developed to call every owner and check in on them during these times and connect them to the co-op. But I also wanted to make sure, so I put a whole slide in here about making sure you knew that we have another session coming up with Don called Predicting the Future Really, and how to plan when the future is shifting. So Don's going to go into more depth on some of these topics, and I didn't want you guys to miss out on that. If you're not,
it's 2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry.
Right.
And if you are not getting the emails every week letting you know what's open for registration, please drop me an email and let us know that. When I send out the email at the end of this, email me and say, hey, I want to be getting those emails. We also have coming up, we don't even have it up yet because we just found out, Debbie Swasuna with G2G Research and Columinate, who's going to come talk about, so is this going to impact market studies or not? And what her thinking is and what's going on right now. We are putting together one on lending in post-COVID-19 with some cooperative lenders. That'll be coming up in the end of May as well. So thank you, everyone. Special thanks to Don. Of course, we're so grateful to have you here. This was terrific. And thank you to everyone for coming out and sharing your time with us. And we hope we'll see some of you at the Outreach Confidential tomorrow. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care.